Alrighty, well, good morning, everybody. It is Saturday. What time is it now? It's Saturday. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. It's February the 22nd in the year of our Lord, 2025. That's what time it is and what day it is and all that. My cold is quite a bit better. I'm still a little bit, but not bad. I'm feeling quite a bit better. Oh, Rocky, you can see he is in his box. There's the patented Rocky Cam again. The patented Camp Crazy Rocky Cam. There he is. He says, oh, it's that damn paparazzi again. That crazy helicopter buzzing overhead. Anyway, like I say, this is the patented Camp Crazy Rocky Cam. And there he is. There he is having a sleep. Or he was having a sleep until I disturbed him. Yeah, that's him. Anyway, he's quite the cat. But he's having a sleep right now, or he was anyway. But yeah, well, he wakes me up all the time. So turnabout is fair play, I guess. If he can wake me up, I can do it to him too. Why not, eh? Tit for tat. Or in this case, tit for cat. Anyway, that's it. That's it. Um, I'm going to tell you all a story, and this goes back now 50 years. It goes back 50 years, so I was quite young when all this happened. And it's kind of how I think it's how I started out, probably as a loner, as someone who doesn't fit in. And it was kind of the beginning of a lot of my problems with society and conflicts that I got into with authority and so on, and with society in general. And it's kind of why I find myself living in a camper in a field with a cat, in a way. Although this was the start of it all anyway. And I'll tell you about it. But I want to make it clear I don't regret any of it. Um, I would sooner be myself than have to sacrifice, who I am in order to fit in. Especially to fit into a society that I see as having some good individuals in it, yes, but in general being a very corrupt and not a very good society, being a very, oh, well, just a very sad society, really. When we look at the people we tend to look up to as a society, and when you look at how people will be unconditionally obedient to crooks, to thieves, liars, and crooks, how people will even hero worship thieves, liars, and crooks because of the position that they're in, because these people are in a position of power. How people will hero worship people who practice Luciferianism and people who engage in pedophilia type things and child sacrifice and human trafficking and all the rest of it, which our high ups in government are involved in, whether you want to know it or not, or whether you want to acknowledge it or not. If it makes you feel more comfortable not to acknowledge it, well, I guess I can understand that. Everybody needs to do what they need to do to get through the day, And some people really need to believe in the power structure in order to be able to function. Otherwise, if they didn't have that, then they'd just feel completely vulnerable and they'd fall apart. So a lot of people need to believe that the government has their best interest at heart, that the police are here to preserve and protect, as it often says on their cars, that the courts are here for justice, that the medical system is here to save lives and to maintain quality of life for people and so on. I found all of these things not to be the case. But anyway, I'm going to tell you the story of the start. What I can trace it back to one specific incident where I really started to question society, and I really started to question the narrative just in general. And I realized that there was something badly wrong with society. And I'll tell you what that is anyway, what happened. When I was in grade school, um, we as a boy especially, we had to fight. Girls really weren't expected to be fighting. In fact, it wasn't considered very becoming to a girl to be fighting, to be fist fighting or whatever. That a girl who was fist fighting would be looked down upon. But as a boy, it was required, and we established a pecking order within the group this way. And so, as a boy, I on the playground in the schoolyard, we used to call our schoolyard where I went to school at St. John's separate school, which was a Catholic school. Here we used to call those separate schools. Um, in Perth, St. John the Baptist separate school in Perth, Ontario. We used to call the backyard there where we'd play, the playground. We used to call it the backfield, because in those days when I first started there, it was literally a field, long grass and big rocks and trees. you know, it was literally just a field. Now we had great fun back there. Don't get me wrong. It was, in some ways, it was better than when they even later on when they got playground equipment and stuff, because we used our imaginations and stuff, and it was pretty good. But there was a lot of violence occurred back there too. And it's funny, one of the things I remember is the nuns. The convent was next door to the school. This is kind of a funny thing, and you'd never see this today. The nuns had to drive through the schoolyard in order to get to the convent in their car, and the nuns had a great big Pontiac car. It was a Pontiac Laurentian, which you never hear of them anymore, but a Pontiac Laurentian was a car when I was young, when I was a kid. And they had this Pontiac Laurentian car, and they used to drive that through the schoolyard. Right along one side of the schoolyard. It was actually the area that was the one paved area of the schoolyard. And so the girls used to play hopscotch there, and they used to skip there too quite often. They'd use that area for skipping. And so when they pulled in through the gate in the car, they'd lean on the horn, give the horn a couple of good hard blasts. And of course, the old cars, they had a horn, I'll tell you. They didn't have one of those meek little meep meep. Would you mind, please? I'm coming through here. Would you mind getting out of the way? That's not what the old cars had. The old cars had the old womp womp type horn, like, get the F out of my way or I'll flatten you. That's what the old cars had. There was no they did not have a politically correct and polite horn. They had a horn that said, look, I'm bigger than you are. I'm more solidly made than you are. And if you don't get out of my way, I'm coming through anyway. So, it's up to you. Have it your way, That's the way the old cars were anyway. And, if you got run over by one of those things, it would probably kill you. So it was a good idea to get out of the way, which, of course, they did. Anybody that was in the way, they'd move all and get out of the way. The car would go through. And there was a garage. Once they went through the schoolyard, and to the convent, there was a garage behind the convent where they had parked their car. But anyway, that's just a little side story anyway. But you never see that now. I mean, imagine having a setup where people have to drive through the schoolyard to get to their house. You never see that now. The liability issues would be huge for something like that, But anyway, back to my story. A lot of violence, anyway. Got into a lot of fights. I won some, I lost some. I was a pretty good little fighter. I didn't really like fighting. I never initiated any fights. But if I was challenged, I also didn't back down because you really couldn't, you know. If you backed down, then you'd become a victim. And so you had to get pretty handy with your fist, and you had to be prepared to use your fists. Anyway, one of the things that they used to do, though, like I was okay with the fighting, but I didn't like it. But I didn't judge it either. I thought, well, that's just how it is. You know, you got to fight to establish your place. That's all. And if somebody challenges you, they're trying to establish their place in relation to wherever your place is in the pecking order. So it is what it is. You got to fight them, and they'll either beat you and they'll go above you, or you'll beat them and they'll stay below you. But that's how it is. Anyway, I wasn't at the top of the pecking order by any means, but I wasn't at the bottom either. I was a tough little guy, and I was a pretty good little fighter if I had to be, you know. And I was handy with my fist if I needed to be, and I wasn't to be fooled around with. I was kind of a serious guy, you know. But anyway, and I was strong. When I was 8 years old, and they did all the stuff they did to me with my by using me as a guinea pig, they took my strength away, and that made me a sitting duck. But when I was 6 and 7 and so on, I was a strong little guy, you know. I was really strong, and I was tough too. So anyway, we were all tough though, you know. And I was going to school with farm kids, kids my age that spent their summers slinging bales of hay up onto wagons and things like that. So you know, these again were pretty serious guys. These weren't guys to be fooling around with, even at that age. But anyway, one of the things that used to happen, though, that I did think was reprehensible, and I would never voluntarily participate in it, was a thing that the older boys used to do to the younger boys. Now, of course, I was one of the younger boys because I was in grade 1 and grade 2, you know, when I was 6 and 7. And what they'd do is they had this game they called free punches. And what they'd do is a couple of the older boys would get a hold of a younger boy, and they'd pin his arms and his legs back. Basically, they would hook their foot up around his ankle or whatever, you know, on each side. Each of them would do this. The one to his left would hook his right foot around the kid's left ankle, and the one to the right would do the same, but with the opposite ankle or whatever. And they'd pin the guy's arms back too. Each of them would hold the guy's arms so that he couldn't swing his fists. And then they would yell, "Free punches! Free punches!" And kids would line up, boys. It was always boys, you know. Boys would line up, and each boy in the line would punch the kid who was being held back. Now, they had rules. You couldn't hit the kid below the belt. You couldn't punch him in the nuts or whatever. And you couldn't kick him. And you also couldn't hit him above his neck. So you couldn't hit him in the throat. You couldn't hit his face or whatever. You know, that was also out. You pretty much were supposed to punch him in the gut is what you were supposed to do. And if you violated these rules, then that kid would get let go. The bullies would let that kid go, and they'd grab you up, and you'd have to take his place. And then he'd get first crack at you. He'd get to go in line first to hit you. These were the rules that they had, you know. I guess this is a little honor among thieves thing or something. I don't know, but they had rules for this reprehensible and well, it was reprehensible and unethical and immoral, basically, for that practice. When we're doing this awful thing, we have rules, so that makes it okay. I guess that's what it was, you know. So, this is what they do. Now, I never got in line to hit anybody. I never participated. I thought it was an awful thing. I thought it was a cowardly thing. I didn't respect the boys who did get into line to hit somebody under those conditions. And I wouldn't do it. I wanted no part of it. But unfortunately, one day my turn to be victim came. And the older boys, they got a hold of me. And they did to me what I just described. And they started yelling, hold me back. They started yelling free punches. And all these boys lined up in front of me. And one after the other, I got hit in the stomach. And they'd hit me hard, just about make you puke. And then the other ones, you'd double over in the pain there, and the other ones would just heft you back up, and the next one would come and just drive you, in the stomach. Went through that several times, and then one of them came up, and he punched me square in the face, and bloodied my nose, and blood was all pouring down my face onto my nice clean shirt. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to have to go home and explain to my mother why my shirt is all covered in blood. Anyway, that never went over well if you come home in that state. But anyway, it ended up that they let me go. They grabbed the other guy up and they said, okay, now you hit him. And I said, no. I said, I won't do that. I said, let him go and I'll fight him. And they said, no, you come over here and you hit him. And I said, no, you don't understand. I said, I'm not doing this. I said, if you let him go, I'll fight him, but I will not hit him while you're holding him back. Well, they said, that's not how the game is played. And I said, I'm not playing the game. I said, I'm not playing any games. I said, you let him go. And I said, I'll fight him. And I said, and I'll clean his clock. I said, I'll fight him and I'll win. But I said, I know I can win because I said he was too big a coward to come to me and fight me when I wasn't being held back. So I said, I know I'm going to win, and he knows I'm going to win. Otherwise, he'd already come and challenged me. So I said, he didn't do that, though, did he? But I said, I'm not playing your game. I'm not going to hit him while he's being held back because I'm not a coward like he is. So I said, let him go and I'll fight him. At least then he's got a chance. At least then he can return punches and so on. I said, he can't do anything right now other than to take a beating. And I said, I don't do things that way. Well, they said, you don't play the game proper. And so they let him go, and they grabbed me up again, and they put me back in that position. And then they let him have a go at me. And of course, he landed me a good one right in the stomach, doubled me over, laughed at me, And then I got a few more shots to the stomach before I was finally let go. And after that, my name, there was a kind of a stink attached to my name in the playground, in the back field, because I didn't play the game. And that's been the case ever since, I don't play the game, and so I got a stink attached to my name. That's all. And it affects a lot of things. It affects every aspect of my life. It makes it harder to get work and maintain it. It makes it harder to connect with other people. People, if they know my reputation, they automatically mistrust me. And so on like that. Now, like I say, in the end, I recognize that everything comes with a price. Fitting in comes at a price, too. So in the end, in this life, all we can do is decide what price we're willing to pay. Because you're going to pay a price. Make no mistake about it. Whatever you do, you will pay a price. And it's just, there's everybody has a price that is just beyond what they're willing to pay. And it all depends I suppose, on the individual. Some people don't deal with social isolation very well. Some people need to be part of the crowd, and so they manage to kind of sear their conscience in a way. They manage to say, well, if I follow my conscience, people will hate me, and I'll end up in conflict with others, and I'll end up in conflict with the law, and so on. And then I'm going to have to absorb consequences. I'm going to have to deal with conflict with authority. I'm going to have to deal with conflict with others just in general. I'm not going to be well liked. People are probably going to slander me. People are going to speak against me in untrue ways, and others are going to believe them. And, it's going to affect me. It's going to affect my ability to date. It's going to affect my ability to get some tail. That's a big thing when you're a young man, If your ability to get some tail is affected, that's kind of huge. And I know I went through a lot of that. I was very sexually frustrated and so on. And so I understand how that is, I know how that can be. And, it affects your ability to do a lot of things. You end up in a kind of a state where you're, you're by yourself and it's me against the world. And it's a tough kind of a life in a lot of ways, But I just found that I couldn't go along with a lot of the things, and I couldn't in good conscience do it. I mean, there were too many times I was asked to stand in front of somebody, and hit them while they were being restrained. In so many ways, I was asked to do that. It wasn't always literal. The first time it was literal, but it's happened in a figurative way too. And I can't do that, and especially after having been in the position of that person, after having been the one who the people were lining up to hit, like in that case. And of course, the longer you live the way I've lived, the more often you find yourself in that position, and the more you don't want to be one of the ones lining up to hit that person, even if it would make you a part of the group, and therefore less likely to become that person. Because what happens is the beating you'll give yourself for doing that is far more severe than any beating that can be inflicted upon you for not doing it. And so, again, you choose the price you pay. I mean, look, if you get married, that comes with a lot of good things, but you pay a price for that. You have to give some things up for that, you know. Any job you take comes with good things, but it also comes at a price. You have to give some things up in order to have that job. You start a business, it's the same thing that comes at a price. There's a lot of good things can come from starting a business, but it comes at a price. Everything we do, if we choose to practice a religion, if we choose to do this, that, or the other thing, it doesn't matter. Everything comes at a price. And the only question is, what are you willing to pay? What are you willing to give up to have this other thing? And that's the key right there is what price are you willing to pay? Because it all comes at a price. Now, sometimes the price is worth it. And again, that varies from individual to individual. The price that I would have to pay for a thing that I think is worth it might be too expensive for you. And the same is true the opposite way. The price that you pay for something and you believe it's worth it might be too expensive for me. And so, again, because we're all individuals. And so there is no rule that fits everyone. And that's how I look at it. That's kind of my philosophy about things. I figured the ones that lined up to hit the guy that was being held back, they paid a price too. They paid a price just like I did. It's just they were willing to pay that price. I wasn't. I was willing to pay a different price instead, though. And so we all made our choices. And in that sense, the choices that I made and the choices I still make, and the price I pay for making those choices, it could be said that that's my own fault because I have chosen that. I think the same is true for people who really have a great need to fit in and be part of the group. They pay a price for that. And in the end, the price they pay is the price they have chosen to pay. It's their own fault because they've chosen to pay that price. So they have to be at peace with that. They need to be at peace with the fact that this is the price they're going to pay. Just like I need to be at peace with the fact that I got to pay a price, for the choices I've made. And there are no easy choices, really, in this world. And the thing is, if you make the wrong choice for you, then you really suffer. That's when you get people they get into addiction and different things because they don't know how to cope with it, because they find themselves in a situation where they have no business being, and they find themselves in a situation that isn't them. Now, in my case, it turns out, being on my own, having very few friends, having my best friend is a cat, as I say, and having and kind of being on the outs with society, that's the price I willingly pay in order to be the man I want to be. And so I can't complain about it. I wish that the world wasn't like that, but we are living in a fallen world after all, and that is the way the world is. And so we got to make the best of it. Anyway, I'm not unhappy. I choose to be happy. I choose to look for reasons to be happy. And I have them. Doesn't mean that I don't have days where I'm quite discouraged. It doesn't mean that I don't have my worries. It doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of things I grieve for, a lot of things that I wish were different. But ultimately, I am happy because the happiness is a choice. I've also chosen to be happy. And that's the whole thing. You got to choose to be happy. So I find things to be happy about. I go out and I look at nature and I be happy. I be appreciative of the few true friends that I have, the few people I know I can trust. I be grateful for my cat. I'd be grateful for all the things I have. I'd be grateful for my broken down old truck and for my camper that leaks and is full of mold and stuff, As funny as it sounds, I'm grateful for these things because the thing is, I went through 6 years there, from 2018 to 2024, however long that is, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24. I'm counting on my fingers, by the way. 6 years with no vehicle. For 6 years, I pushed a wheelbarrow into town or pulled a wagon in the town to get my supplies, and all kinds of weather and under all different conditions. 6 years I did that, So, I'm grateful for my truck, such as it is. I get discouraged and worried about it sometimes, but I'm grateful for it. This camper, for all its shortcomings, is better than a tent. And I've lived in a tent. That's how I started out homeless, living in a tent in the woods. And believe me, this camper is better than a tent, even with all its shortcomings. And it's got plenty of shortcomings, but it's better than a tent. And see, this is the thing. Your worn out boots with holes in them and stuff, the guy that has no shoes would love to have those, So that's the whole thing anyway. It's like, no matter how bad off you are, you're well off compared to somebody. And, people who have the things that we're told by society that we should want and that we should really be working for, a lot of the time those things really end up being liabilities, and they end up being sources of worry and concern. And then there's always somebody trying to take it away from you. Whatever you have, there's always somebody that says, I should have that. And they don't, a lot of those types of people, they don't want to work for it. They just want to take what you've got. And in a way, they will work, though. They'll work at taking what you got instead of working on getting one of their own. That's what they'll do, because they decide that asshole shouldn't have that. I went through that when I had the 1947 Dodge car. I met a lot of men who resented me for having that car. They thought they should have it, and I had a lot of guys try to take it from me. I had a guy tell me that I need to sign it over to him, and at first I thought he was joking, and I laughed about it. And he said, no, I'm not joking. You shouldn't have that car. I should have that car. You shouldn't have it. I said, sign it over to me. And when he said that, I said, are you crazy? I'm not going to give you my car. You crazy? And at that point, he told me, we were in somebody's house at the time, and he said, out of respect for the person who owned the house, he wasn't going to beat me up. But he said, normally, for just respecting him like that, he would take it out on me. He'd beat me up. Anyway, I told him we could go out on the street. I said I agreed with him. We shouldn't fight in the house, but I said, I'll go out on the street with you anytime, if that's how you feel. But see, it was a stupid conversation. Imagine having the nerve to tell somebody that they should just give you their car because they're not good enough to have it. Ultimately, somebody tried to steal it, and I run them off, and then they ended up cutting my headlight wires trying to steal it. And then they come back and they poisoned my gas tank a few days later. And then I took the engine out of it, unfortunately. But, so ultimately it was taken from me. I had one guy after that try to trick me into giving him the car. He promised me $1,200 that I knew I'd never see. But he wanted me to sign the car over to him and trust him to pay me the money, which I didn't do. And then it turned out he had sold somebody else my car for $5,000. And he came after me on the street one day telling me I owed him $5,000 because he said, you effed me out of $5,000 because I had a guy willing to pay $5,000 for that car. Here he was trying to steal my car from me and sell it out from under me to somebody else for $5,000. And he's acting like he's the wrong party. And you see, that's how a lot of people are. Not everybody. There's a lot of good people in the world. But I've run into a lot of people like that over the years. And so I don't really mind not fitting in. I mean, I don't mind not fitting in. Anyway, bottom line is, we all pay a price. Whatever we choose, we pay a price. So just be sure to choose the thing that, the price attached to it is a price you can pay and that you're willing to pay. Choose something that is that brings you more benefit. That brings you enough benefit that you figure it's well worth the price. That's all. Anyway, that's it. We'll talk to you later.